He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. And welcome to the Fith chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready to go for episode 109. And Dennis, to start off the show, I've got to ask you, were you celebrating just like so many other Red Wings fans at the Maple Leafs blowing that 3-1 series lead to the Montreal Canadiens?
Yeah, I wouldn't say celebrating, but I was, feeling it, I think, a little bit more. I'm like, it doesn't bring me joy. Maybe it should, but it's hard to believe, man. They got such a good team, but to see how they've been snake bitten, they've been a good team the last couple of years, but over the years, all the way back when Gretzky got him, when Doug Gilmour, it looked like it was going to happen. Gretzky hadn't had a good series, but then in Game 7 came up, think he had a hat trick there. And you know what? My first playoff game I went to see was Wings against the Leafs, I would say, maybe 91, 92. Morshevsky, I think, scored in overtime. That place was rocking. It was awesome. But, yeah, I can't say that I'm in on the rooting for the Maple Leafs demise, although, you know what? If I could have picked it, I would have picked the Canadiens to come back to beat them. So,
yeah, it was. It's not something I completely comprehend why people have to hate the Maple Leafs so much. I know that there's a lot of talk in the United States about how we love that a Canadian team hasn't won the Stanley Cup Finals in a long time or something like that. But it was a Canadian team versus a Canadian team, so it was a zero-sum game the way I saw it, and. I don't know what there is to hate about the Maple Leafs. I know that they took Mike Babcock, but a lot of Red Wings fans and certainly players didn't want Babcock, and Babcock's been gone for them for a couple of years now. So,
no, I think at times maybe I should, get into the hatred more, because it seems like I'm on the outside looking in. A lot of that, like people just like, it's not like I like the Blackhawks, but the all to just be offended, like, oh my God, they were offending Detroit. They were talking about big. I don't know.
Hatred in sports is fun.
You know what? It is. I get it. I'm just not completely fueled by it. And I'm just not as. I try. I just don't. I don't have the hatred as much as other people do. So I don't know. I thought like on the college side, because I like Michigan. It was because I didn't go there, so maybe I was just kind of like on the outside looking in, and maybe it would have been different when I went there.
Well, you hate Central Michigan and Western Michigan, right?
You know what? Central, one time when I was doing play-by-play for Eastern, I asked the Central guys if they would come on at the halftime. It was like one of the second or third, games that I was ever doing play-by-play, and the guy totally stiffed me, and he's acting like a jerk. So I was yelling like, "Oh my!" Eastern was beating them, so there was a little bit of a rivalry there, but. Again, it's not one of those things where, I don't like Ohio State, but I don't, wake up every day talking about, I hate those son of a bitches.
And that's a big difference between the typical Ohio State fan and the typical Michigan fan.
Yeah, I think it's like the Detroit sports fan, too. Like, I need to get more of a Detroit versus everything type attitude. Like, it's like, I'm passionate. I'm passionate about the games and the competition and what happens there. I think the fringe stuff and the being able to be ticked off at like the slightest little,
Well, it's hard when you suck at everything. And that's the way it is right now with all the Detroit sports teams. They suck. So, if you get screwed in a Lions Bears game, if you get screwed in a Twins Tigers game, is it the end of the world? No. I mean, you go from being projected to lose 100 games to losing 99 games or 101 games, whatever the case may be. So, if you got something on the line, then all of a sudden things matter and those rivalries start to heat up.
Yeah, even when they're good, I just need to maybe follow the hatred a little bit more.
Yeah, well, they've got to get good first, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there, if we ever get there. Definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've got 5 more fantastic chapters for you. Those that are watching via YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, thanks. Also to those who are listening via Apple, Google, and Spotify, thank you for tuning in. If you want to participate in today's show, you can do so via Facebook Live and via YouTube. Dennis will be monitoring and reading some of your comments throughout the course of the show. Let's take a look at today's book. And as you can see, in the second chapter, we've got some big NBA injury superstars. Anthony Davis, Luka Doncic, and Joel Embiid are all battling injuries. How concerned should their fan bases be? In the third chapter, should the Pistons trade the number 1 pick if they get it? There is an intriguing scenario that a Pistons beat writer brought up a few days ago. We'll tell you what that is, and we'll share whether or not we would make that particular deal. In the fourth chapter, Naomi Osaka withdrew from, I believe it was the French Open. And yes, she withdrew from the French Open. And a lot of, she cited not wanting to speak to the media and also mental health issues. So we'll ask whether or not it's important for athletes to speak to the media in the first place. And then in the fifth chapter, we'll try to win you guys some money with the major wager. And of course, on Thursday, we each bet the same game and didn't exactly help you guys or ourselves out. So we'll try to do better on that tonight. But then let's turn the page to the first chapter, and that takes us to Al Avila's Tigers. Al Avila has still not been fired as the GM, and it perhaps is going to take even longer to get him fired because he's got some momentum. He's got the wind behind his back as we hit the first day of June. In April, the Tigers were 8-19, the worst team in baseball. Everyone except for Chris McCoskey was either calling for Al Avila to be fired or just saying nothing. In May, the Tigers weren't just better because they couldn't be any worse. They were actually an average team. They were 14-13. And if you look at how they lost the first 3 games of May, they're actually 14-10 in their last 24 games. So, Dennis, I'm not going to ask you if it's time to give Al Avila another extension, but I do have...
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I bet you thought that's where I was going.
That was a good one.
I've got 2 other questions. First, have the Tigers turned a corner either on their rebuild or for the season? And do you think May will end up being their best month of the season?
Yeah, well, I hope not. I hope May is a sign of things to come. I hope that means they turn the corner. I hope it means that the rebuild, is going to be launched. I know there was a lot of people that were hopeful after, Turnbull's no-hitter, like, hey, rock bottom, and, this is going to be the catapult that's going to, we'll remember this day. I was thinking, it'd be nice. Like, I wasn't saying, I wasn't jumping all aboard that, like, oh, yeah, the no-hitter is really going to take everybody there. It's it would be nice for both of those things here, but I can't get with baseball. You can't get too freaked out by certainly a game and a series or even a month here. Like you mentioned, it was a winning month, but it was still just 500 month, which is nice. I think it shows just where Detroit sports is at right now. I mean, there's no Red Wings, there's no Pistons in the playoffs, and the Tigers have been so bad that even a month of winning baseball are getting people like, hopefully this is the start of, the turnaround. And I'm right there with them. And there's some encouraging things. And the most encouraging thing is the pitching there. And, the ERA, they were, 29th in the first 2 months, and looking it up for May, 3.60 puts them in the top 10 in all of baseball. So, they're pitching a lot better, and you see the young guys coming out there, and, you do see a little bit of promise, but, that's as far as I'm ready to go. I'm not, forecasting like, oh yeah, this is definitely the turnaround.
Yeah, I don't even think that most people realize that the Tigers had a winning 500-esque month in the month of May. I think that most fans checked out by the time they got to May and after the first 3 games of May. And if you told them that the Tigers have won 14 out of their last 24 and they had a winning month in May, they'd be very surprised about that. I know I was surprised when I started noticing the last few days in the month of May. But I don't think that there's been a groundswell of people saying, "Oh, here we go. Here's the big Alavila turn," or anything like that.
I think did Simo used to say?
Here come the Tigers. I'm certainly not saying that, and I don't even think some of the biggest slappies are out there saying, "Here come the Tigers." But I think there's no other way to put it than this was a good month for the Detroit Tigers. And especially when you look at a couple of their key pieces in the rebuild. You look at Casey Mize, and he's not just pitching better than he was last year, which it was hard to pitch worse than he pitched last year. He's not just pitching better than he did in April. In May, he pitched like an absolute all-star. He leads the team right now for the year with an ERA in the low threes. And in the month of May, he had a 1.74 ERA. In 31 innings pitched, he allowed just 2 home runs. So that's you could say, hey, it was only 5 or 6 starts. It's only 1 month, small sample size, and that would be fair. But this is a guy who's only had a 4-month baseball career, or actually about a 3-month baseball career, because he pitched, a month plus a week or so at the end of 2020, and now he's into his 3rd month of this year. So he's barely over 3 months into his career, and he already had a month with a 1.74 ERA. That's a big step forward for him. Tariq Skubal gave up 2 runs or less in 4 of his last 5 starts and had an ERA of 3.33 for the month. So those are the 2 most important starters on the team. I mean, Turnbull had a no-hitter, which is great, but you don't look at him as being a huge, valuable piece for the future. Matt Boyd, obviously a big step back, which, I mean, you can never really trust Boyd to put it together for a whole season. You can hope that he can do it through at least the trade deadline, but you'll always be disappointed. But those 2 guys, Skubal and Mize, are the guys I think that folks are going to be hanging their hats on and saying this is a sign that things might be turning forward. The offense isn't getting shut out all the time, which is huge. They had that 17-game span where they scored a total of 30 runs. That's over. They're not putting up. I think they still have not scored in double figures in any game this year, which you should be able to do by accident, particularly if you're into June by now. So that's not good. But they're not getting shut out, and that's huge. Akil Baddoo, we talked about him on the last show. He's looking like a decent hitter again. Scope, Candelario, Castro. They all seem to be heating up, and Candelario and Harold Castro each hit over 300 in May. So I think those are good signs, but, I mean, you still got that bad defense. You still got Boyd giving up 14 runs in his last 3 games. The bullpen still sucks. And not only does Miguel Cabrera finish May with a 204 batting average, but A.J. Hinch keeps on putting him in the heart of the order. So you don't like that. I think this will end up being the best month of the season for the Tigers because they haven't even really been hit by the injury bug yet. And it's not like you can expect Casey Mize to get better. It's not like you know for certain that Tariq Skubal is going to be as good or better than he has been right now. But I just don't trust the offense at all, and I don't trust the bullpen at all. So they will not have another winning month, and I would expect the final 4 months to each be 4 games below 500 or worse.
Well, it'd be nice if they could continue this into June, at least for, I was going to say for the Illiches, but really for, the Tigers organization, because they've now going to have unlimited fans. And, if they, have a little first week, hiccup here, people will be like, oh, this is just the same old Tigers. But, if they go out there and, they go another time to the rotation here and then they come home, I think, you can pick up a little interest. I mean, I think people are going to say, a little bit.
I think people are going to say same old Tigers until they get close to 500 because, like I said, they've just had a winning month. It was basically 500, but a winning month, and there still isn't a big buzz about this team. I think fans expect a lot more.
The Yankees did a little something for them. Sweeping the Yankees. That was, it would have been, more important, let's be honest, if it would have been the team from the Central, in particular the White Sox, or the Indians, take your pick. Or the Twins wouldn't have been bad either, but doing it for the Yankees and the way, what it means, the payroll and the history and everything else, I think a lot of people took notice of that. Like, hey, they swept the Yankees.
Well, and now they have to go on the road for a week before they have their first opportunity to host fans, which would be a week from today. And how, they already lost their first game of the road trip. They have a game tonight where Matt Boyd is pitching, and obviously he's been struggling. Just mentioned how bad he's been his last few starts.
You didn't bet him?
I did not bet on the Tigers. I didn't bet on the game, period. But if I was not going to bet on the Tigers. But if the Tigers end this week-long road trip with a win or two, then that sweep of the Yankees is going to be in the rearview mirror. If they're at 500 or better, then there will be more buzz. But still, I think a lot of fans are going to say they're still so far below 500. Who are who are these guys even? I can't name most of the players on this roster. If Mize isn't pitching, then I don't really care.
All right, let's get to some of the feedback. And if you're tuning in here for the first time, whether it's on the live chat, whether you're on Facebook or Twitch, you go ahead and put your response in there, and we read it. Like Beth on Facebook, who says, if they lose in the 80s range, that would show progress for this year.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, when you got a lot of folks expecting them to be a 100-loss team. I saw an article, I believe it was from ESPN.com, that was still projecting the Tigers to be in a four-way race for the worst record in baseball. You finish with a record of, what would that be, 88 and 74. I'm sorry, 74 and 88. That would be a huge step forward. When a lot of folks are saying that, hey, just lose 90 games and that's progress. Don't lose 100 games and that's progress.
Yeah, right, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that I would consider that a huge step forward as well.
Well, I don't know about a huge step forward, but if they lose 100 games, that's where all of this.
If they lose 88, considering 2 years ago they lost 114, I would consider a 26-game improvement over a span of 2 years to be a huge step forward.
Keith's buying in. He says, "Here comes the Tigers."
I think maybe Simo hacked his account.
He says, "Uh-oh, there go the Tigers." I wish them well, but I ain't buying it. Maybe this will be their best month, but let's hope not. They're a bad assembled team. Bottom 5, Keith says, who also weighs in and says, Fulmer has looked great. Trade him before he gets hurt again. We've got... the
deadline is something that's going to be interesting because when you look at who's going to be available or who other teams are going to want, if Fulmer keeps on pitching like this, teams always want a bullpen arm, and would the Tigers want to trade him away? You look at Matt Boyd, and through the month of April, he was looking like an all-star. He was looking like a guy that you might want to trade again, but this is unlike, I believe it was 2018 when he had 2 good months, because this time he had 1 good month and then 2 starts into May, and then his 3rd start, he fell off of a cliff. So he's had 3 bad starts in a row. Is he going to pick it back up and build up some trade value, or is that it? He's obviously probably thinking in the back of his mind that he's got a contract year coming up in a year or 2 or something like that, so he needs to really step things up. But our team's going to have any interest in Boyd? It's going to depend on how well he pitches. You look at the rest of the team, and could somebody want perhaps a Jonathan Scope? They signed Robbie Grossman to a 2-year deal, but is somebody going to perhaps want him? Like that, when you think about how there's, I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, there isn't a lot that I think teams are going to be interested in right now, especially if they know that. I mean, perhaps Turnbull had a good month, even if you exclude the no-hitter, he had a pretty good month. It's not like this is not like 3-4 years ago when Al Avila had all these all-stars that he was pawning off. And so even
might
as
be able to get a top 100 prospect for Jacoby Jones. I don't know. Let me read a couple more. Sorry. Jelinek, good to see him back. He's ready to hammer the over on the Tigers Brewers game tonight.
Hammer the over. I wonder what that over-under is. I could. How about Jelinek tells us what the over-under is, and then we'll decide. We know that Boyd is pitching, and he's struggled, so that would suggest a high number. The Tigers also had a bullpen day yesterday, so that would mean that they're not going to have a lot of fresh arms. I don't know who's pitching for the Brewers today.
Yeah, I don't either. I like the bullpen. I like the opener that they had. I don't know how they were doing it. Sideshow Raj over on YouTube. He's asking the question. He's got a prop bet for us: over or under on 8 wins for Casey Mize this season.
Ugh. Look, you know me. I really do not care about wins and losses for starting pitchers or pitchers, period. So, I mean, no offense, Sideshow Raj, but I would not bet this at all because I hate that they're attributing the win-loss stat to a pitcher. But if I was going to bet on it, how many does he have right now?
3? I don't know.
I would say under, just because you have to rely on the Tigers' bullpen to hold the lead, and you have to rely on the bats to give you something. But I do not like.
You got to rely on the defense too. I don't like having to rely on the Tigers' defense and the bats.
Mize has 3 wins.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's too much that you have to rely on. Right? I mean, you can't go out there even if you go and pitch 8 shutout innings. You still have to. He's not doing that.
So he would have to get 6 wins in the final 4 months. That's to hit 9 wins and hit the over. So he'd have to get a win and a half per month.
Doable.
Yeah, you know what? I would take the over. I hate that stat, but I would take the over.
Not as much as you hate the extra inning rule.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, I hate the extra inning rule so much that yesterday when the Tigers went into Manfred Ball extra innings, I turned the radio off and did not listen. I got an update on my phone to find out that the Brewers won.
You showed them. That's what I was thinking when I saw that.
Yeah, that's right.
Chapman's putting it down. He refuses to watch Manfred Ball.
That's right.
Paul W. goes off script here. He's wondering about Aaron Rodgers. He says if he's so pissed off and retires this year, he has to pay back whatever. He comes back next year. Does he get it all back and put the Packers on cap and odd citation for the next year?
I do not know what the cap ramifications would be for Aaron Rodgers or the Packers if he retires. I mean, if he has to pay back money, then I would imagine that they do not want to be in the same situation that the Lions are in with Calvin Johnson, when they say, oh, you're going to retire? Give us some of that signing bonus back. They want to make sure that he's in their good graces, despite the fact that right now Rodgers and the Packers have beef.
Yeah, that's right. And, no player has ever – I know the Colts were holding out that Andrew Luck was going to come back, and they gave him all of his money, but – you take your signing bonus. He's got like $24 million out there, but it's spread out. But that cap money all goes into 1 year, so it would screw the Packers in the short term. But then if he came back, I don't even know how that would work. So
yeah, I don't either. I don't see the odds of Aaron Rodgers taking a protest year off and then returning to the Packers being very high.
No, he's going to go and host Jeopardy for a year and then decide to come back. Yeah, that seems. I'll take things likely not to happen for 400.
Yeah. All right, Dennis. Let's turn the page to the second chapter.
Well, that gets us to the NBA, and it's been on fire this first round. It's been amazing. Some of these games, some of these series look like this was going to happen. We're saying this is going to happen, and now it all seems flipped. A lot of it, Chapman, has to do with a bunch of big injuries here. What do we think about the first round of the NBA playoffs?
Well, you're right about how exciting it's been. There's only been one sweep in the NBA playoffs. And a pet peeve of mine, I always get frustrated with how the NBA schedules their first round because they'll have a Game 4 conclude before a Game 3 happens. Like, why were the Bucks able to sweep the Miami Heat before, like, the Nets and Celtics had played Game 3. I don't get that. But the fact...
I hate it worse than the hockey. You got the first round still going on, and you got the second round going on with the Bruins and the Islanders. I mean, I didn't like that part. They should whole first round should conclude before you start the second round. But that's sorry.
Yeah, I don't get that either. But it has been exciting because you haven't had the sweeps, and there have been some upsets. A lot of it has had to do with the injuries. I mean, you look at the biggest seed upset that we've had, or the two biggest seed upsets that we've had so far in terms of an individual game. And you had the 8 seed Memphis Grizzlies beating the Utah Jazz. Why? Because of an injury to Donovan Mitchell. He did not play in that first game. The Jazz have won every game since then. And you also had another 8-1 game where there was an upset yesterday where the Sixers looked like they were going to be cruising toward a win and a sweep of the Washington Wizards. But in the first quarter, Joel Embiid went down, and Westbrook, Beal, and company were able to eat that W. But when you look at the big three injuries as it stands right now, they're superstars. You got Anthony Davis right there. You got Luka Doncic with the neck injury, and then Joel Embiid, who landed on his tailbone yesterday, but it was actually a knee issue, and he's listed as doubtful for tomorrow's game. I think that the Dallas Mavericks and their fans should be a little bit concerned about Luka's neck because he was not 100% for Game 4, and it showed. Apparently, according to, I think it was Adrian Wojnarowski, Doncic has shown some significant progress from yesterday to today, so that's positive. But the big issue for the Mavs is not Luka's neck. It's that the Clippers have found some rhythm, and even if Luka is 100%, they're not winning another game in this series. I was surprised that the Clippers lost Game 1 and stunned that they lost Game 2 because I'm thinking they're the better team, but now they don't have home court advantage. The fact that they were able to win Games 3 and 4 quite easily suggests that this series is over no matter what Luka has left in his tank.
Well, you know me. I picked the Clippers last year to win it all, and then I was reluctant to pick them to go to the finals again this year. Mm-hmm. But then here I was doing it again. And then I watched that first game, and I watched the Mavs and Luka Doncic play it. And I was just like, why would I pick against this guy? And then even in Game 2, they ended up losing that Game 2. The Mavs did, but they were up 14-2. I watched it at the beginning. I'm like, what? I am so stupid for betting the Clippers. If somebody said, hey, you completely get out of your bet, you completely get out of everything with the Clippers, and get me out. Because at that point, they've done nothing but, Rondo's been in. All of a sudden, Kawhi Leonard, he looks like the guy, the reason that I picked him last year. Paul George, looks like an all-star.
Playoff P.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how this thing is flipped with the injury to Luka here. He's not getting much help either.
Yeah, well, and that's why I don't think that it matters if he's 100%, because if he's 100% for Game 5, they're losing in Los Angeles, and he could be 100% for Game 6, and they're going to lose there. Like, they need Porzingis to be a superstar. They need Tim Hardaway Jr. to put up 20 points a game. They need Finney-Smith and all these other guys because the Clippers don't just have two players. They're a deep team as well. I
don't like Porzingis. He doesn't bring any. Like, he's a 7'6" guy that just can, throw up a spotty three here and there. What else does he do?
He gets hurt, just like the unibrow does on a regular basis. And I think the Lakers should be on high alert. If the unibrow is not 100% and he's not close to 100%, then there's a 100% chance that they don't win this series. The Lakers were nothing after Davis went out because they had no interior defense, and the Suns were just penetrating at will. LeBron James is not what he used to be. He's battling injuries, and he's not as explosive as he used to be. And the key for the Lakers, I thought, in this whole series was to get rid of the Suns quickly so that Davis and James could rest up for that second round series against whomever they were going to play. Instead, this series is going at least 6, and Davis is hurt. There was a stat that they showed on ESPN yesterday. I think it said that with Davis out and LeBron James playing, the Lakers are like 1-6 or 1-7 this year, including a loss to the Suns. Look, if the Lakers are 100% healthy, they're the better team, and they beat the Suns in 5 or 6. But I picked the Suns in 6 because I expected Anthony Davis to get hurt because he always gets hurt. He is hurt, and it's going to be Suns in 6.
Yeah, Lakers missed KFC too. There's no doubt about that. I am a KCP. I know what it is. I've always called him that. I don't know why. It's my little joke, and nobody ever laughs at it, but I still call him that. We'll just wait to the major wager till we get to the Lakers here. But, yeah, Chris Paul, it looked like he was done in Game 1, and then there he was this last game, pointing to his shoulder and pointing to the crowd. I'm back. So, he looks good. Yeah, and the Suns look good. Ayton looks good.
Yes. Well, and that's another reason why I feel more comfortable saying Suns and Sixers, because Chris Paul can dribble again and he looks like a star again. And then you look at the third injury, Joel Embiid. This should really concern 76ers fans. Even though Embiid is hurt every year, I gave the East to the 76ers before the playoffs started because this was one of the healthiest seasons he's ever had. And then it took until game 4, but he had that freak injury when he went up for that layup in the first quarter, and it changed the whole game because it looked like the Wizards were going to get blown out. They came back and won that game. Embiid is doubtful for game 5, and the Wizards might be able to sneak out another game, especially if they keep on playing hack a Ben Simmons, and he's out there going like
self check on the line. I can't believe that.
Yeah, I mean he's
slap a Simmons.
Yeah, slap. There you go, slap a. He was worse than Drummond. I mean, forget Ben Wallace and Shaq. He was worse than Drummond.
Bang the drum.
Yes, that's our beat the drum. But Sixers fans should be very concerned because if Embiid is out, they could lose game 5. They almost certainly will lose game 5. And if he's ailing against the Hawks, assuming they get to play the Hawks, then that could make that series longer. And if he's not 100% against the Bucks or the Nets, well, then they won't be able to complete the process of getting to the NBA Finals.
No, they won't. Update from Miller. Colton Wong with an RBI hit, 1-0 Brew Crew. Over and under is at 7.5, and Jelinek hit the he's playing the over tonight. Keith says, I told you guys Suns are going to the finals versus the Bucks. Now with AD out, looks even better. LeBrick is not going to carry them, and yet they still have a chance. The Lakers are a deep team.
Yeah, well, they're a deep team, but a deep team doesn't only gets you so far against another great team like the Suns. If the Lakers were a 2 seed and they were playing a typical 7 seed-esque team like, I don't know, the Memphis Grizzlies, or they're playing, the Warriors, had they gotten the number 7 seed, then perhaps even with Anthony Davis out, they would have a good shot. But you're playing the Suns, and you don't have the most athletic player on your team. You don't have an inside presence like Anthony Davis there. I know that they got Drummond, but Drummond is no Anthony Davis. They don't have a shot without Anthony Davis being 100% or close to it.
No,
and he could tweak it again if he comes back and plays in Game 4 or 5.
I don't know. I'm not I don't know what's happened to Harrell. Like he was with the Clippers last year, and now he's getting benched.
Montrez, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the Pistons should look into him, but I don't know. Caruso doesn't really do anything for me, and Kuzma, and I guess Gasol.
Yeah, they need more from Kuzma. I mean, he was supposed to be like their number 3 guy this year, at least before they got Drummond, and he has the ability to put up 20 in a game. So they're going to need him to step up the scoring volume with Anthony Davis either hobbled or out.
Roger says, I trust LeBron more than Booker and Ayton in a Game 7. I do, too.
Are they going to get to a Game 7?
Yeah, believe me, the refs, Ayton's going to pick up 2 fouls before they even throw the ball up in Game 6. You remember that. Chris Paul should be an MVP candidate. He's made the difference all year long. The freaking Suns are the number 2 seed. Yeah, Chris Paul's awesome. Chris Paul's great.
Yeah,
Booker's pretty good, too. And Ayton's playing well. I mean, it's a nice... they got it going right now. I don't... things typically have to be perfect for LeBrick to win. Keith says, Sideshow Sports, over and under 15 touchdown passes from Jameis Winston this season. 15?
If he's the starting quarterback, it'll be over. If the Saints trade for Aaron, if they trade for Aaron Rodgers, it'll be under.
Yeah.
And I mean, if he's that's the thing. If he's a starting quarterback, it'll be way over 15. And if they trade for Rodgers, it'll be way under 15. So I would assume that they won't trade.
Or if he comes out and throws a bunch of interceptions and they put Taysom Hill in, that also could be a situation. So I mean, there's a lot of if, ands, or buts when it comes down to eating W's for Jameis.
It's also a 17-game season, so you're just talking about a touchdown per game, and he's got a 1.5 touchdown cushion if he gets 1 per game.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's going to be the starter all year long, and I think the Saints are going to be better than they were last year. And I think that interception rate, standing on the sideline and being able to work with Drew Brees for the year and see how he operates, Sean Payton, I think all those things. I think a good bet for comeback player of the year if they have such a thing where you can put a bet down on.
Ooh.
Probably they do.
Yeah, I would assume they do as well. That's something to consider as we get closer to the NFL season for the major wager, possibly.
Yeah, I already put wager down on Ben Roethlisberger to win the MVP. Remember?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Well, I got a crazy odds for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck to you. You ready to turn the page to the third chapter?
Yes.
All right, and as we turn the page to the third chapter, that takes us to the Detroit Pistons and a tweet from beat writer Rod Beard. He is the
Your
Pistons.
boy.
I'm cool with Rod Beard. I haven't seen him in a while because I haven't been to any Pistons games in a while, but he's the beat writer for the Detroit News, and he tweeted something on Friday that I had been thinking about for a while, but I hadn't said it or tweeted it out, so I'll just give Rod Beard all the credit. Here is that tweet. It says, mental exercise. Let's pretend the Pistons get the number 1 pick. I did say pretend. And the Warriors moved up in the lottery with their pick being number 2 and then getting Minnesota's pick at number 4. Would you trade Cade and a current rookie, Stewart or Bay, for Evan Mobley and Jalen Green? Now, this is one thing you have to understand about this is because the Warriors lost both of their play-in tournament games, they missed the playoffs, so they're going to be in the lottery, and they could, with their draft pick or with their lottery, move up to number 2 or number 3 or number 4, and they could get Minnesota's draft pick because the Andrew Wiggins for D'Angelo Russell trade included a top 3 protected draft pick going to the Golden State Warriors. So if it's in the top 3, Minnesota keeps the pick, but if it drops to number 4, that's where that scenario would play out, where the Golden State Warriors would have 2 and 4. So Rod Beard's question once again is, would you trade Cade and either Stewart or Bay for the number 2 and 4 picks to get Evan Mobley and Jalen Green?
I would trade Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart for either one of the Jalens and Evan Mobley. So I come away with either Jalen Suggs or Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, and I'm giving up Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart. I like that. I like Cunningham, but I like Mobley and I like Green and Suggs too. And so to be able to get 2 of those guys, and Stewart's nice. I like him too. He would have been a top 10 pick if somehow he was in this year's draft. But I would give up a 1 and 10 for 2 and 4. I would do that. I would make that move.
Yeah, I would do this too. I would do it in a heartbeat because Cade Cunningham looks like the best player in the 2021 draft, but sometimes the best player isn't picked first. It was Anthony Edwards the best player in the 2020 draft? He came on late and had some 40-point games, but I would take LaMelo Ball, who was drafted after him, because he's got an all-around game. So just because you got the number 1 pick and it seems like it's a sure thing. Although, I will say, to be fair, heading into the 2020 draft, it was a toss-up between Ball, Edwards, and Wiseman, and any one of those 3 could have been number 1, where this year it's close when you look at the top 5, but Cade appears to be number 1.
What about a couple of years ago when the Fultz and Tatum and the Pistons Jackson, right? They were all in the top 5, and Markelle Fultz, the Sixers moved up to number 1. He was pretty much the consensus number 1, and he turned out looked like a bust for a couple of years. He looks all right now, but
he's still got injury issues and was injured for most of the season with the Magic this year.
Yeah, but you would rather have Tatum.
Yes, you would definitely rather have Jason Tatum than Markelle Fultz. Jason Tatum putting up 40 and 50 points in a playoff game. But, I look at Stewart and Bay, and, if you're a Pistons fan, you were impressed with what those rookies did, particularly considering they weren't lottery picks. They certainly weren't top 5 or top 10 picks. One was picked 16th, one was picked 19th, and they were both arguably top 10 rookies, where Bey was arguably a top 5 rookie, almost certainly a top 5 rookie. But you got to look at the upside. Like Sadiq Bey blew past just about everybody's expectations, and he had set the all-time record for three-pointers made by a rookie in the NBA. But is his upside higher than Evan Mobley's? You look at Isaiah Stewart, and you see that he's looking like potentially, a mini Ben Wallace with his ability to block shots and rebound, and then he can do things that Wallace couldn't do by stepping out and shooting threes. But does he have the upside that Evan Mobley has? I would say absolutely not. And then you look at Jalen Green, and he's got a higher upside than than Stewart and Bey. Green, a lot of folks are saying, is the best scorer in the draft, meaning a better scorer than Cade Cunningham. And so I would gladly trade away Cade and Stewart for Green and Mobley. You think about the potential for their starting lineup next year. If they were to keep Cade Cunningham, that would not be a bad situation. But then you perhaps at some point of the year be saying, well, who should be the starting point guard? Is it going to be Hayes? Has he improved or not? Or should it be Cade Cunningham? Cunningham's going to be starting at one of the guard positions, but where should it be starting? And if you have Jalen Green and Evan Mobley, then you're talking about Hayes inserted as number 1, and he's got to prove that he can be that point guard. Green at number 2. Bey, you're keeping him at the small forward. Grant, hopefully he'll be healthier than he was at the end of the year as your 4. And then number 5, your center, you've got Evan Mobley. That's youth. That's athleticism. That's talent. Your worst athlete in that starting 5 would be Bey, and he's a sniper from outside. And by the All-Star break, you could be in a situation where everyone in your starting 5 outside of Hayes could have the potential to put up 15 a game.
Yeah, all excellent points. Let's go to the feedback here. And if you're watching, you want to get your thoughts across, type away. We'll read them. We'll comment on what you have to say. Like Roger, who says, should the Pistons consider Franz Wagner or Hunter Dickinson?
Dog, we're talking about top 4 picks, and you want to talk about Franz Wagner and Dickinson? I mean, look, Franz Wagner, they say, is going to be like around the number 10 pick in the draft. We're talking about potentially the Pistons trading down from number 1 to get number 2 and 4. There's no situation that I would consider where the Pistons are going to be trading out of the top 5 if they have a pick that high and trading down to get him. Hunter Dickinson, I mean, the Pistons, I believe, have 2 high second-round picks, and if Dickinson is still there, then you might take a look at him. But the Pistons have Plumlee for 2 more years. They obviously have Isaiah Stewart on a rookie deal. If they've already drafted Evan Mobley, then there'd be no reason to get another center.
Yeah, Dickinson would look good with the Pistons if he was there in the second round. You're right. And, Franz hasn't fallen to the second round, and he's not good enough to take in the top 10. So, top 5, certainly.
Yeah, I mean,
the Pistons, what's the lowest the Pistons could have? 6, 7?
Yeah, the lowest would be the 6th pick.
Yeah, I wouldn't take Franz Wagner with the 6th pick. That would be really disappointing. But I would take Dickinson. Yeah, but we're all hoping that he's going to come back and dominate the Big Ten. That's what Jelinik's saying. Hopefully he comes back, Dickinson, to the Big Ten and takes Michigan to the Final Four. Keith says, right now, drafts. Hakeem was the consensus pick in 84. Jordan went 3. Top 5 picks are hard to figure out some years. Sideshow with another over and under prop. 4 starts for Mac Jones this season. Over or under on that?
4 out of 17. Cam's had an injury history, so I would go over.
So would I. Jelinik likes the over as well. All right, there we go.
All right, let's turn the page to the 4th chapter.
That gets us to athletes, coaches, and the media. Tennis superstar Naomi Osaka, she withdrew from the French Open, and she was going to get fined for not talking to the media, and the rest of the majors were going to fine her as well. She talked about it being depression. Is that what she said? Mental
Yeah, she's
health
had some
concerns.
mental health issues and she's had depression in the past.
All right. Should, not just in tennis, in all sports, should Osaka, other players and coaches have to talk to the media? Chapman.
Yeah, well, with regard to Osaka, I mean, this is obviously something pretty significant. This is not just like the typical athlete, like for instance, what's his face, Marshawn Lynch saying, "I'm just here so I don't get fined, and I just don't like talking to the media," because Marshawn Lynch wasn't so distraught and so annoyed or potentially depressed that he decided that he just was not going to play games for the Seahawks or not play games for the Raiders, particularly in a major. I mean, that would be like Marshawn Lynch skipping a playoff game because he didn't want to talk to the media and he was having some mental health issues. This is obviously pretty significant if Osaka is saying, "Look, this is one of the 4 most important tournaments in all of tennis. I grew up wanting to play in this tournament as a little girl, and I'm quitting because I'm having some real mental health issues." I think that that's pretty significant. If you got athletes and coaches who just want to take a day off from the media because they talk to the media on a regular basis, that's fine. But I when it comes to them just not speaking to the media at all, unless they've been clinically diagnosed by a psychologist or something like that, I think that they should have accountability and should have to talk to the media after every game. I don't want them to be copping out because I don't think that's right. These athletes and these coaches are entertainers, and part of their job as an entertainer is to answer questions afterwards. I know the most important part of their job as entertainers is what they do on the field or the court or the ice or on the clay or wherever they're playing. And if they win, you like it. If they lose, you don't like it. But part of what they do in the entertainment industry is explain what happened during the course of the game. They talk about things, especially recently, that don't even have anything to do with the game. That gets media members like you and I, that gets fans to, excuse me, got sneezing all of a sudden, but gets fans to chat. And it makes fans either more or less interested. And it's free advertising. Like when you see people on First Take, or you see people on Skip and Shannon, or you're listening to your favorite radio show and they're talking about what the athlete said after the game, then that's actually free advertising for the team. Because guess what? If they're talking about the team or they're talking about the athlete, then fans are going to be hearing about them and thinking about them. So I think it is their responsibility to ask to answer questions afterwards, unless they want to take a rare day off from the media, or if they've got some real issue like it appears Naomi Osaka actually has.
Yeah, Osaka. I don't know, for some reason I called her Osaki earlier. It's Osaka, so I apologize. Yeah, it seemed like tennis jumped to the fine pretty quickly here without listening to her. Like, listen to your athlete's concerns and see like if they could set up something, whether it would be through how they do Zooms now, or they could have had an arbiter there to answer the questions, or that they could have repeated them, because she's one of the superstars of the sport. You want her to feel comfortable. You want her to be able to get up there and be able to respond to the questions so you can grow your sport and use that. You don't want to have a situation where she's shutting that down and then the other players are getting their back there. And then you have to get to a situation where you're fining your athletes. That's nothing that you want to get. And tennis is unique somewhat from, it's not a team sport. It's just the individual, but you're growing the sport. So one player can mean a heck of a lot. Could you imagine if Serena Williams, decided like she wasn't going to talk to anybody? But after saying all that, find a way that she can feel comfortable and that you can, have her ask the questions. But having said all of that, for the most part, most athletes and coaches, they don't have anything to say. They're boring, and I hate that they sit up there and they all act like they don't want to be there. And it's the worst thing. Like, when they don't want to be there and they're just all talking cliches, get them out, because it's the worst thing having to listen to these guys sit around talking where they don't have anything to say. They're not interested in having anything to say. They don't know how to talk, or, they're just whatever it is. If it's uncomfortable, just get them out of there. And coaches is the same way, you know. I know, like, they got to sit there after the game. 90% of that stuff is garbage, and 95% of the stuff they say on Monday is garbage. And, you know, you get a couple quotes, you know, the beat writers will, you know, put it out there. Okay, you know, this is what they thought. But for the most part, if they don't really want to be insightful and interesting and talk about their game, get them out.
Well, I agree that a lot of the athletes and the coaches are not insightful and aren't interesting. It's rare that you'll have someone go to the extreme of being Bill Belichick and just give you one-word answers and say nothing. But one of the big issues and one of the reasons that you see generic answers or you see quote-unquote coach speak all the time at press conferences is because the reporters are lazy and they don't do their jobs. They ask lazy cookie-cutter questions just because they want to get a couple of quotes so they can fill out an article and meet the deadline, or they want a generic soundbite just so they can say, hey, you know, coming up on the 10 o'clock news, I've got Coach X talking about something or this athlete talking about something, and they don't say much. Sometimes the question isn't even a real question because they'll just say, talk about the job player X did on defense tonight. And that's going to elicit a cookie cutter generic answer. I hate that. And when I go to press conferences, I don't do that. And so if you want to get a question, I've learned this, if you want to get an interesting answer, an insightful answer, you've got to make sure you know exactly what you're going to say when you pose that question. And you can't be worried about whether or not that athlete or that coach is going to be upset with your question. It's not your job to be friends with them. I'm always amazed at some of the questions that don't get asked, and it's not just fake media like Bally Sports Detroit, because obviously we know that the Pistons could come off of a 30-point loss, and the reporter, they always let the Bally Sports reporter ask the question first because they know it's going to be a softball one. They'll say, hey, tough game, but Saban Lee, career high 11 points. That was a bright spot. You know, nobody cares about that for the most part, or maybe throw that in as a bonus afterwards. But these media members need to ask better questions that will elicit a genuine response from an athlete or coach, because I've done that. I've let the everyday beat writers get there and ask their bland questions just so they can fill out a story, or some of the columnists that don't want to ask a hard-hitting question and they won't get a decent response. But sometimes I know that I've asked a good question because I will ask a question near the end of the press conference that nobody else has asked, and then guess what? The next day I read the article written by the beat writer, and one of the central themes is an answer to a question that I asked that they failed to ask. So if the people that are reporting on the games ask decent questions and don't just act like, okay, let me see if I can get the coach or the player to say a couple of words so I can just stick it in the article and finish it off, then you know what? These post-game press conferences and these post-game locker room sessions with the players would be more interesting. But I think there's too much laziness.
Well, I think there's some of that going on. There are a lot of horse crap questions, but also it depends. Like, every person's got a different role there. I mean, if you're a writer and you're filling up your story and you just really do want to know what happened on the third down, you might think that's a real bland question that's just filling out the article, like you say. But, you know, that's what, to them, they feel like they know. And if you are hosting a newscast coming up that night and you want to have a 10-second soundbite on just what you thought of the game in a nice little bow like that, you ask the question, you know?
Hey, coach, make words. I mean, that's basically what they do.
Well, if you can, the job is to be able to ask the question open-ended to try to elicit the response that you want. A lot of times, like when I was covering games in radio, I was having to ask a question to try to get a preview for the next game and try to get some sound that was going to go in an update. And a lot of times these guys are like, well, we're going to get to that tomorrow or something else. So you have to work at your question. That is something, and some of that does sound like horse crap. And then nowadays, or you know, it was a couple of years ago where it was a big thing. Like they were putting the like the Lions post games. They would be like live on the radio. They'd be live on TV, and so you know the 10 or 15 reporter, like it was much of a presentation. Like they were showing off as much as it was to try to get a good question. It was basically like just this. Anything but trying to get good responses that was going to work, whether it was going to be TV or radio. It was all like showing off for the moment. So
it shouldn't be about showing off for the moment. It should be about ensuring that you're going to get thought-provoking answers. And if you are, like you brought up the possibility of a TV reporter just wanting a 10-second clip to show during the 10 p.m. sportscast. Well, guess what? There's going to be something, whether you ask a, quote, talk about question or not, that you can use for a 10 o'clock newscast. You don't have to ask a question at all, and you can pull something from a 10-minute coach press conference.
Well, sometimes you want your voice in there.
No, that's fair. But you know what? You can also get a 10-second clip from a thoughtful response that's actually going to be something that fans, that viewers, that listeners want to hear, and that will raise an eyebrow. It won't just be, yeah, both teams played hard, gave it 100%. They were a little bit better than us today, but we're just going to go look at the film room, and we're going to get back to work, and we're going to try hard next time. Like, you can put that in there, and guess what? Your news ratings are not going to go up. They're going to go down. But if you are the reporter out there asking the tough questions, and it gets the response that gets some juice, well, then guess what? Perhaps your ratings will go up. You'll get, number one, higher ratings, and number two, you'll get the 10-second sound spot that you wanted. That should not be the goal, is just to have them say something, because you could just send your camera guy there and just say, hey, record it, let all the other guys answer the questions.
No, hopefully if you're asking a question, it's not just to get 10 seconds of fill. Who cares what they say?
They do that.
Well, I know it seems like that.
No. They do that. Like, I've actually been to a press conference where a reporter was struggling to get their question out, and the coach didn't know what they were saying, and the reporter just said, I'm just trying to get a soundbite for my newscast. It's like, dog, like, that's it? That's what you're doing? That's what you went to journalism school for? So that you could sit there and just say, look, say some words, please. I don't care what you say. Just make some words and make it coherent so that I can throw it in a newscast. That's trash.
Well, it's time to elicit the perfect human being at this point, and that was Red Wings defenseman Nick Lidstrom. It didn't matter what question you asked him, how you asked it, what was going to happen. He would talk for 9 to 16 seconds. And it was perfect. It was perfect for radio. It was perfect for TV. It didn't matter what you were going to say. He knew exactly the way to phrase it. You go back and watch or ever listen to an interview with Nick Lidstrom, all of his responses, about 9 to 16 seconds, and everything that he says is like very poignant. Everything's usable. It's just like awesome. You really just had to. You wouldn't like it. You'd be like, hey, Nick, what'd you think?
Yeah, I would not ask that question, but I get your point.
No, you wouldn't. But he was really good at it. So
yeah, if you're a lazy reporter, then he was perfect for you. And look, there are going to be people out there. There are going to be athletes out there who are just not going to give you much because they don't feel comfortable, like Naomi Osaka. One example that I'm not going to say Tony Ortiz. He's comfortable, but I was going to say one example that stands out to me is Tony Snell. Like, he had 20 points in a game in his first season with the Pistons about halfway through the year as a scoring explosion. So everybody wanted to talk to him after the game, and nobody really talked to him throughout the course of the season. And he was given like 5-word responses for everything. And so either he had a strategy of not wanting to speak to the media, or he just wasn't good with the media, and that's fine. But not everybody's like that. Sometimes you just have to put in the work to ask the good question.
Well, my pet peeve, like right after the game, or you're talking to somebody, it's a great game and everything, the question usually is almost 99 out of 100 times, hey, how did it feel? I mean, you try to strive to, ask another question that's still going to elicit the
good.
How does it feel?
We won.
It was awesome, but most of the time it is, how did it feel to win? All right, let's go to the chat before we get to the 5th chapter here. And we have Sideshow Raj again getting in. Sideshow Sports. Over and under. 12 starts from Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I don't believe that they have usually Ryan Fitzpatrick's starts get cut short because there's a promising first or second year quarterback that they want to stick in there. And I don't believe that's the case this year because Dwayne Haskins is gone. I think they drafted a quarterback later on in the draft, but it wasn't a first or second round pick.
They got the cat that they started in the playoffs last year, Heineke.
Yeah, he's not going
to
be.
And they got Kyle Allen from Carolina.
Yeah, those guys are not going to be taking away starts from Ryan Fitzpatrick. If he gets hurt, then he obviously would be thrown on the bench, but he's not going to get benched for poor play so they can put in freaking Heineke or Kyle Allen.
Yeah, I think they like. I think I could easily see the other two over Fitzmagic. Give me the under.
Wow.
Jelinek.
Okay.
What's the over and under 6 questions from Sideshow Sports?
He's got a lot of
Over.
those over-unders today.
Hey, over.
I
right.
think he's done about 1 per chapter, so I'm going to stick with the under.
Okay. Well, speaking of gambling, let's move on.
All right, we'll turn the page now to the 5th chapter, and that takes us to the major wager, an opportunity for us to help you guys out in making some money. Obviously, we've got legal sports betting in the state of Michigan. You can do it at the casino or on your phone. So, Dennis, remind us what you picked on Thursday and what you're thinking about doing tonight.
Well, if you go back and watch the show on Thursday, I was all over the over in that Portland-Utah game. I loved it. I said, that's the one that you need to be hitting. And it did go over. Unfortunately, right along with that, I said, you know what? I think I'll also bet Portland. And they ended up losing that game, got blown out. So hopefully you just listened to the excitement of my voice talking about the over and not the, and I think I'm going to go with Portland too. So that's what happened. I split, juiced out on that one. But having said that, I'm going back for another double-double tonight.
Ooh.
And I'm going to the Lakers and the Suns game. LeBron James, he said, put it on my shoulders. Well, the over and under in points, 27.5. I am going to put it on his shoulders, and I'm going over. But you know the one I really like is the points, rebounds, and assist total.
Mm-hmm.
It's 45.5. I'm going over on that. I like that one more than the points, but I'm playing the points too, and I'm playing the points, rebounds, and assists, and I'm going over on both LeBron James tonight.
Yeah, I like that pick because if Anthony Davis doesn't play, and they're not going to be saying, all right, Alex Caruso, we need 30 out of you. They're not going to be saying, hey, we're going to put in Montrezl Harrell, so he's going to put up 15. They're not going to put in, whichever Morris guy that they have. Or they're not going to say, hey, Drummond, it's time for your first 2020 game as a playoff Laker. It's going to be on LeBron James. I stand by what I said earlier, that he's not what he was. But somebody's got to score for them, so I think LeBron James could hit that. I'm going on Thursday. I, like you, had the Blazers to win and cover, and obviously they lost, so that was not a good pick. I'm going back to the NBA, and I'm going with the Suns to cover that 5.5 points. Davis is not 100%. He is probably going to play, but he's not 100%. LeBron James is not 100%, and he looks like he's not 100%. He's a heck of a lot closer to 100% than Davis. He looks like he's about 90%, but you can tell that 10% difference. KCP, I believe, is going to give it a go, so that'll help them. But Chris Paul isn't 100%, but he's improving. That's a huge step up for the Suns. It's a home game, so I've got the Suns taking control of this series and winning by double digits to comfortably cover against the Los Angeles Lakers.
All right, chap, that's going to do it. I want to thank Brian Jelinek. It was good to have him back. We will see him on Thursday. Also coming up on Thursday, Will Chapman ask good, hard-hitting questions. We'll see. That's going to be on the 5th chapter. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithy, and thanks for watching, and good night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bruh. This ain't even optional, man. You